Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true disturbing stories about the feral people of Appalachia. By the end, you'll understand why so many locals say, don't wander past the ridge after dark. But before we begin, please consider subscribing. And don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. I was 13 when it happened. Our house sat high on the ridge, tucked so deep into the Appalachian Mountains that some maps didn't even show the road. It wasn't much of a road anyway, just a winding strip of dirt carved out decades ago, barely wide enough for a truck. Beyond the backyard, the ground just kept climbing until it disappeared into walls of green. The trees grew so close together up there you couldn't even squeeze between them without getting clawed by branches. Nobody wandered up there by mistake. The ridge marked the edge of our property, and past that was the state park. People always said hikers stayed out because it wasn't worth the trouble. Too many private property signs, too many thorn thickets, too much loose rock. If you wanted a good view, you picked an actual trail. You didn't climb into a maze of jagged stone and poison ivy. But I loved it. The only way up was that dirt road. It curled up the ridge like a snake past an old cabin that had burned down before I was even born. Nothing left of it but a skeleton of black beams melting into the dirt, nails rusted orange, the chimney cracked and leaning like a drunk. Mom said the fire was an accident, but Dad swore the old man who lived there had gone crazy and torched the place himself. Either way, nobody rebuilt. If you kept going past that, the road opened into a clearing. That was my spot. Right in the middle stood a power line tower, all rust and steel, creaking when the wind hit it just right. From up there you could see the whole valley. The rocks were flat and warm in the sun. It felt like standing on top of the world. Other kids had parks or strip malls to hang out at. I had that ridge, and I had Felicia, our black lab, 90 pounds of muscle, teeth, and bad attitude. Loud, fearless, and basically my shadow. I honestly thought nothing could scare her. That day, the air had that edge to it that meant fall was coming, sharp enough to wake you up. I stuffed a book and some snacks into my backpack and started up the road with Felicia trotting ahead, tail wagging so hard her whole back end swung with it. She was practically dancing, nose down, sniffing everything like the forest was leaving her secret notes. When we reached the clearing, I dropped my pack and claimed my favorite slab of rock near the tower. It was flat and smooth, perfect for sprawling out with a book. Felicia sniffed around the edges, weaving through boulders, probably chasing some scent only she understood. 5 pages in, she froze. Not just paused, locked up. Like a statue. Her ears went stiff, tail straight out like a rod. A low growl rumbled out of her chest, deep enough to vibrate in my hands where they held the book. I looked up and followed her gaze. She was staring at the tree line on the far side of the clearing, the side that sloped hard down into the park. That hillside was nothing but thorn bushes and jagged rock. Nobody came from there. Then I heard it crunch, not the light crackle of a deer stepping through leaves. This was heavier, a rock shifting under weight. Then another sound, branches snapping, like something big was forcing its way through the brush without caring how much noise it made. I told myself it was a deer, maybe a bear, but my hands tightened on the book until the spine bent. Felicia barked, one sharp, violent burst that made my heart punch against my ribs. Her whole body shook as she lunged forward. I saw movement in the green, and for a second, I almost relaxed. A man, maybe a hunter who got turned around, but then he stepped out of the trees, and my stomach turned to stone. He was barefoot. His feet were raw, cracked open in places, streaked dark like he'd walked through blood or mud. His toenails were so broken they looked like splinters. His clothes weren't really clothes at all, just scraps tied together with strips of something pale and stringy. His skin looked weathered, like bark stretched tight over muscle. His hair hung in greasy ropes down to his shoulders, matted and knotted with dirt. No pack, no shoes, nothing in his hands, and he smiled when he saw me. Wide, too wide. Felicia lost her mind, lunging so hard the leash ripped out of my hand. Her teeth flashed like glass in the sun. I dove for her collar, wrapping both hands around it while my arms shook like they weren't even mine. Hello? The word came out before I could stop it, and it sounded wrong, thin, too small for the space between us. He didn't answer, just kept grinning, teeth black and chipped, like he'd been chewing on bones. His eyes locked on mine, dead pale things that didn't blink. Then he started moving, not straight toward me, but sideways, slow, deliberate, like he was trying to pen me in. What are you doing up here? My voice cracked so hard I barely recognized it. He didn't even twitch. Snap, a branch broke behind me. I whipped around so fast my neck popped. Felicia twisted with me, barking like a machine gun. There was another one, smaller, almost child-sized, but wrong. Its arms were too long, elbows sharp as sticks. Its face looked like someone had stretched skin too thin over bone. Same eyes, though, flat and pale, blinking too slow, like they'd forgotten how. It crouched low, knuckles pressed into the dirt like an animal, its head tilted to the side at an angle that made my stomach knot. I stammered out the dumbest thing. This is private property. The first one's grin split wider, like his face wasn't built to stop smiling. His tongue slid over his teeth, leaving spit shining in the sun. Then he made a sound. It wasn't a word, wasn't even close, just a low, throaty hum that crawled inside my bones. The smaller one answered with a click of its teeth. Fast, sharp, like snapping a stick. That broke me. I clipped the leash to Felicia's collar, yanked so hard she yelped, and ran. Rocks scraped my shoes, thorns clawed at my arms, but I didn't stop. My lungs burned, my legs felt like fire, but I kept moving. Felicia was half dragging me, barking so hard her whole body jolted. I didn't look back until the trail dipped into the trees. They were there, both of them, standing at the edge of the clearing like statues. The smaller one crouched low, fingers digging into the dirt, head cocked like it was listening to something I couldn't hear. I didn't stop running until I saw the house. I slammed the door, locked it, and stood there shaking, forehead pressed to the wood. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't want to explain something I didn't understand. By nightfall, I almost believed my own excuses. Hikers, weird off-grid people. That had to be it. A week later, Dad came home swearing. His buddy had checked the trail cam near the clearing. It had been shut off after a few frames. When he developed the film, there were only 3 shots, 2 of deer. The last one froze my blood. It was me and Felicia, running across the rocks. My face stretched with panic, her teeth bared mid-bark, and the edge of the frame was wrong. Blurry, like something stepped in right as the shutter clicked. Dad asked if I'd seen anyone up there. I lied and said no. I was 29 when it happened. My cousin Mason and I had been planning this trip for weeks, and honestly, I needed it more than I admitted. My 4-year relationship had just gone up in flames, and my apartment had started to feel like a padded cell. Every night was the same, me staring at my phone, rereading old messages, pretending I didn't care. I was sinking, and Mason knew it. Dude, he said on the phone that Tuesday, "You need trees, not Tinder." He wasn't wrong. Mason had this spot he swore by, deep in the Appalachians, miles from anything that could be called civilization. Completely off the map, he promised while we loaded his truck Friday morning. Like, if you hear voices, they're either mine or a ghost, I laughed. Because what else do you do when someone says that? The drive took almost 6 hours, most of it winding through hills that turned into mountains. The farther we went, the narrower the roads got, curling along ridges with drop-offs that made me grip the door handle. My phone signal vanished somewhere after the 3rd gas station burrito, and I remember thinking, well, guess I'm officially in the wilderness now. Finally, Mason veered onto a dirt track that didn't look like a road so much as a bad idea. "You sure this is a thing?" I asked, staring at ruts deep enough to swallow a tire. He grinned. "Relax, trust me. Every time someone says trust me in the woods, I make a mental note for my obituary." The truck groaned like it hated every second of that path, and when we finally stopped, it was in a clearing so overgrown it looked like it hadn't seen people in decades. We grabbed our packs and hiked for about an hour, deeper and deeper into the trees. The silence got heavy the further we went. No birds, no bugs, just this dead stillness that made my ears ring. When Mason finally said, "Here we go," it felt like a relief. It was a flat patch near a slope with a little gully running below. No trails, no campsites, no signs of life. We set up the tent, built a fire, and cracked open a couple of beers. For a while, it was perfect, just two guys laughing too loud because who was going to hear us out here? We roasted whatever passed for food in Mason's cooler, told the kind of stories you only tell when there's no cell service to fact-check you, and for the first time in months, I felt okay. By midnight, the fire had burned down to glowing embers. We crawled into the tent, lined our boots by the flap, and passed out. I woke up to a sound. At first, I thought it was part of a dream. Thin, sharp, like something slicing the air. Then it came again. High-pitched. Not a scream, not exactly a whistle. Something in between. I lay there, frozen. It wasn't steady. It drifted, floating through the trees. Sometimes far, sometimes close. Like it couldn't make up its mind where it wanted to be. "Mason," I whispered. "Nothing." I nudged him. "Hey, you hear that?" He grunted, sat up, rubbing his face. The sound came again, longer this time, and it ended with this weird rise, like laughter that didn't know how to laugh. "Bobcat," he muttered, voice low. But it didn't sound like he believed it. "Sounds like a person." The words slipped out before I could stop them. We sat there, breathing like we didn't want the air to hear us. Then, another sound. A click, like a rock tapping another rock. From the left, then the right, then behind us. Not random. Mason swore under his breath. Probably kids screwing around. "What kids?" My voice cracked. "We're in the middle of..." The cry tore through the woods again. Closer now. My whole body went cold. Mason grabbed the flashlight. "We should check it out." "Are you insane?" "It's nothing. Relax." He unzipped the tent before I could stop him and stepped out. I crouched halfway out, my pulse pounding so hard it felt like it was in my throat. His flashlight beam cut through the trees in slow sweeps. For a few seconds, nothing. Just black woods swallowing the light. Then he froze. The beam locked on something. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "What is it?" My voice cracked. He didn't answer. His shoulders were tight, and when he turned his head toward me, his face looked wrong. White. Like every drop of blood had drained out. I crawled out far enough to see. At first, I thought it was a stump. Then it moved. A figure stood about 20 feet away, just outside the circle of light. Naked except for strips of filthy cloth hanging from its waist. Its skin looked gray, stretched thin over sharp bones. The hair on its head was matted in ropes, caked with something dark. It tilted its head too far to the side, like its neck didn't work right, and just stared. Then it smiled, not a normal smile, lips peeled back too far, gums black, teeth like splintered glass. Something moved behind it, crawling low, fast. Another one, then another, then more, peeling out of the brush like they'd grown there. 3, 4. I couldn't keep count. They circled us in silence, eyes catching the light like wet stones. Mason stumbled backward, ripping the tent flap open. "Get inside, now!" I scrambled in after him, and it took 3 tries to lock the zipper because my hands were shaking so bad. Inside, the nylon walls felt paper thin, then scrape against the fabric, slow, deliberate, like fingers dragging over it. Then another and another. shapes pressed against the walls, bulging inward just enough to see hands. Mason's voice cracked into a whisper. "What the hell do we do?" I couldn't speak. My throat had shut tight. All I could do was clutch the little knife from my pack like that would matter. Then they screamed. All of them. Not words, just broken, jagged sounds, exploding from every side. The tent shook as they slammed their hands against it, over and over, faster, harder. "Go!" Mason shouted. He ripped the zipper and we bolted. Branches whipped my arms as we ran blind, crashing through brush, sliding down the slope into the gully. I didn't look back. Couldn't. The screams chased us, echoing through the trees, rising until it felt like the whole mountain was screaming. We ran until the dirt road appeared like a lifeline. We dove into the truck, Mason fumbling the keys so hard I thought they'd snap. When the engine roared, it felt like salvation. We just drove until the mountains were a dark smudge in the mirror. We never went back for the gear. My shift at the ranger station ended a little after midnight. It was supposed to be done at 10, but the incident reports had stacked up like a bad joke, and the supervisor asked me to stay and finish. By the time I closed the last log, the station was dead quiet. Everyone else had been gone for hours. The whole building felt hollow, like it had been emptied of life the second the sun went down. The only light came from the desk lamp throwing a weak yellow circle on the paperwork, and the faint blue glow of the vending machine humming by the door. I should have taken the truck back to the cabin, but the keys were locked up in the supervisor's office. I wasn't about to sleep in the station just because I didn't want to walk 2 miles. The shortcut through the old service trail would get me home faster. It's a straight shot if you know it. Cuts through a stretch of forest that's thick enough to make you feel like you're miles from anything. I've taken it plenty of times, day and night. People around here talk about how that trail feels wrong after dark. They'll use words like bad energy or off, and then they'll laugh it off like they didn't mean it. I never got it. It's trees. They look different in the dark, sure, but trees are still trees. So I grabbed my flashlight and headed out. The first part was easy. The trailhead's just past the supply shed, and the dirt path is wide enough that the underbrush doesn't claw at you right away. My boots crunched against the ground, and the sound echoed like it had extra weight on it. That always happens out there at night, like the silence is pressing everything down. My light cut a thin white tunnel ahead of me, and every so often it hit the mist hanging low near the ground. The air smelled like wet leaves and cold stone, sharp in my nose like I'd just opened a jar of old pennies. There's no cell service out there, and that's fine by me. It's simple, quiet. Usually, about halfway in, I saw something pale off to the side, just sitting there in the dirt like it didn't belong. I figured it was trash, a bag or maybe an old t-shirt someone dropped. People aren't careful out here. When I got closer, I realized it was a sneaker, just one. Filthy, worn down like it had been chewed by dogs and left out in the rain for years. The laces were gone, and the sole had started peeling away, but the ground around it looked wrong. It wasn't packed hard or covered in leaves like you'd expect. It looked fresh, soft, like somebody had dug it up or moved it there recently. I crouched down, ran my fingers through the dirt. It crumbled loose, damp, like it hadn't been sitting long. But that didn't sit right with me. It's not just a lost shoe when the ground looks like that. I stood up and kept going, a little faster now. My light started darting left and right like my hand had a mind of its own. Every shadow looked like it had an angle that wasn't there before. The trail ahead started feeling longer than it should have been, like the end had pulled a few extra feet out just to mess with me. And then I heard it, not loud, just a faint rustle behind me, like dry leaves shifting under something light but quick. I stopped dead. My ears strained so hard I could hear my own blood thudding in them. Nothing. No wind, no bugs, no night birds. Just empty air. I took a step, then another. The sound came again, closer this time. Same rhythm as my steps. I froze so hard my knees locked. Slowly, I turned and swept the flashlight behind me. The beam slid over tree trunks and brush like it was hunting something. Nothing moved. Just the pale blur of my own breath in the light. I told myself it was a raccoon, maybe a fox, something small, something normal, because that's what lives in the woods, right? Normal things. I walked faster. My boots hit the dirt harder than I wanted, and every crunch felt like a gunshot. My fingers were slick on the flashlight. Every couple seconds I flicked it behind me, like maybe this time the beam would catch something and I'd finally know what I was hearing. By the time I hit the creek crossing, my heart was pounding like I'd just run a mile. The trail dips there, down into a shallow gully, where the water cuts across before climbing back up. The rocks were slick, and my boots splashed louder than they should have. When I got to the other side, I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't rustling. It was heavier, a crack, sharp and sudden, like a branch breaking under something big. I spun around so fast the light whipped the trees in a blur. For a second, all I saw were shapes stacked on shapes, branches tangling like bones. And then the beam hit something that stopped me cold. Eyes, dozens of them, low to the ground, spaced wide apart, glowing like tiny mirrors. Too far apart to be dear, too many for anything that makes sense. And they weren't blinking. I froze so hard I forgot to breathe. My light shook in my hand as I raised it higher, slow, like I didn't want to know what I was about to see. And then I saw the face, not an animal, a person, or something trying to be one. The skin was so pale it looked like paper pulled too tight over bone. The eyes were too big, round, and wet like glass marbles. The hair hung in ropes, clotted with mud and sticks. The mouth hung open just enough to show teeth, yellow, jagged, filed down like someone tried to shape them. Then another face slid into view. And another. And another. They weren't standing, they were crawling out of the underbrush on all fours, their limbs too long and thin, bending at angles that made my stomach flip. Some were naked, skin stretched and scarred. Others wore rags that looked stitched from scraps of everything, cloth, leather, pieces of fur. One had what looked like a t-shirt sleeve tied around its wrist like a bracelet. One of them pushed upright, slow like the act itself hurt, and swayed where it stood, its head tilted in this broken, twitchy way, like it was trying to recognize me, like it was trying to remember what it used to be. Something in me snapped. I ran. Branches slapped my face, ripped at my jacket. My boots slammed the dirt so hard I thought the sound alone would break my legs. Behind me, the woods exploded with noise, screams that didn't sound human, laughter high and sharp like glass breaking, bodies tearing through brush like a stampede. They didn't move like animals. They didn't move like people either. It was like they'd learned how to chase in silence, then decided halfway through that noise was better. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My chest was burning and the ground felt like it was pulling at my boots like it wanted to keep me. The trail twisted hard and I nearly ate dirt, but somehow I stayed up. When I saw the glow of my cabin through the trees, I pushed harder than I ever have in my life. I hit the porch, fumbled the keys so bad they nearly snapped in the lock. When the door finally gave, I slammed it, threw the deadbolt, and dragged the dresser across like it was made of air. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold on. My whole body felt electric, like every nerve had turned into a wire. I stayed on the floor all night with the rifle across my lap, my back pressed against the wall, my eyes locked on the door. I didn't hear pounding, didn't hear scratching, just movement out there, slow and patient. And every so often a laugh, short, broken, like something trying to remember how it used to sound. By morning, they were gone. I told my supervisor everything, didn't even look surprised. He just stared at me for a long time and said, "That's why nobody takes the service trail after dark. I don't touch that trail anymore." My uncle owned this chunk of land way out in the Appalachian Mountains. A couple hundred acres of nothing but dense forest and sharp ridges that swallow cell signals like they never existed. Out there, even radio gives up. If something happens, you deal with it alone. He had this old hunting cabin sitting on the property, nothing fancy. 2 small rooms, a rusty wood stove, a porch that slanted just enough to make you wonder if it would collapse under you. The kind of place where everything smells faintly of smoke and damp wood no matter what you do. When he asked if I wanted to help him fix it up for summer, I didn't even think about it. 2 days out there sounded like heaven. No homework, no notifications buzzing nonstop, no voices except ours, just quiet. Honestly, I figured the hardest part would be hammering some nails and shoving spiderwebs out of my face. The first day was good, long but good. We spent hours clearing fallen branches, patching up part of the roof that was starting to sag. By the time the sun dipped, my arms felt like noodles and my shirt clung to me with sweat, but I didn't care. Out there, the silence felt thick. Not empty, just full of something else. The kind of silence that makes you realize how loud life usually is. That night, we ate canned chili by lantern light. Uncle Dale told me about the black bear he'd seen the year before. "If you see one," he said, pointing his spoon at me like a warning, "make yourself big. Don't run." I laughed. I wasn't worried about bears, not really. The second day started the same. Dale left early for town to grab more supplies. Told me to stick around, finish stacking the firewood and clean out the cabin. Said he'd be back before noon. By 11, I was done. Cabin spotless, firewood stacked like a picture in a survival magazine. I had nothing left to do but sit and wait. That's when I saw it. This narrow, overgrown trail disappearing into the trees behind the cabin. It looked like it hadn't been used in years, half-eaten by weeds, curling uphill like it was trying to hide from anyone who didn't belong there. Curiosity won. I grabbed my jacket, told myself I'd just check it out for a few minutes, and started walking. The trail climbed fast. Roots bulged up through the dirt like old bones, snagging at my boots. The air felt cooler the higher I went, and the trees pressed closer, their trunks crowding out the light. After maybe 30 minutes, just when I was thinking about turning back, I saw something that made me stop dead. A circle made of stones the size of basketballs, arranged in a perfect ring. Not close enough perfect, measured perfect. Each stone carved with jagged marks. Symbols I didn't know, not letters, not numbers. Inside the ring, the ground was bare. No grass, no leaves, just hard-packed dirt, smoothed over like someone had scraped it clean. I crouched, running my fingers over one of the carvings. It was deep, sharp-edged, but rough, like whoever made it didn't care about neatness. That's when I heard it, a branch snapping off to my right. I froze. At first I thought deer, or maybe a raccoon. The forest is full of sounds if you stand still long enough. But then came another noise, a laugh, soft, high-pitched, like a kid's giggle. My stomach turned to ice. There were no kids out here. The nearest house was miles away. "Hello?" My voice cracked, too loud in the silence. Nothing. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the trees. They looked the same in every direction. Gray trunks, dark spaces between them, like open mouths. The silence pressed in, heavy enough to feel on my skin. Something in me said, "Leave now." I backed up, careful at first, then turned and started walking fast. I followed what I thought was the trail, but after a few minutes, nothing looked familiar. The trees all blended together, swallowing the path. I walked faster, telling myself downhill meant the cabin. My breath sounded loud in my own ears. Then I saw him, about 30 feet ahead between 2 trees, crouched low. At first glance, I thought it was a man. But then I saw the arms, way too long, almost dragging on the ground. Fingers curled like claws, skin pale and stretched tight over bone, smeared with dirt. No hair, no clothes. In those eyes, locked on mine, wide, unblinking, Then he smiled. I didn't think. My body just exploded into motion. I ran so hard my boots barely hit the ground, crashing through brush, tearing my jeans open on thorns. Branches slapped my arms and face, but I didn't feel a thing. My heartbeat filled my head, and behind me, footsteps, soft, fast, almost gliding, then another set, and another. I didn't look back, couldn't. The forest smeared past me. My lungs burned, my chest felt like it was caving in. And then, thank God I saw it, the cabin, through the trees. I hit the porch full speed, almost ripped the door off its hinges getting inside, slammed it shut, locked it, then just stood there, back to the wall, shaking so hard my teeth clicked. For a few seconds, nothing, just the tick of the old wall clock and the roar of blood in my ears. Then I heard them, footsteps, outside, slow, deliberate, circling the cabin. I held my breath. A shadow slid across the window. Then another. Then another. No voices, no words, just breathing, deep and steady, like animals testing the air. And then, a sound I'll never forget. Something scraping against the door. Then a hand slid under the gap at the bottom. Thin, skin gray and tight over bones, nails like splinters. The fingers tapped against the wood, one by one, slow, like counting. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound, couldn't move. I stood there, heart hammering, every muscle locked, waiting for the door to break. And then, silence. The fingers withdrew. The footsteps faded, melting back into the trees. I don't know how long I stood there before I heard tires crunching outside. Uncle Dale's truck. When he walked in, I was still in the corner, shaking so hard I could barely talk. He didn't laugh, didn't even look surprised, just stared at me and asked, "You went past the ridge, didn't you?" I nodded. He didn't say anything for a long time, just looked out the window, jaw tight, then finally said, "Pack up, we're leaving." We drove through the night without a word. I've never gone back. My shift at the ranger station wrapped up at 4. I signed out, clipped the radio to my belt, and filled in the inspection sheet for the old fire tower. My supervisor wanted updated photos for the annual safety report. No one else volunteered, so I figured sure. Quiet hike, easy job, and I could get out of the office for a while. The tower was about 3 miles from the station, down a service trail barely anyone uses. It's not on any public map, which makes sense because the place hasn't been maintained in years. The first 2 miles were fine, but after that, the trail basically disappears. Roots everywhere, undergrowth thick enough to trip you, and no signage at all. The last time I'd been up there was during training, so I was relying on memory. I parked my truck at the station, locked the gate, and headed out with my pack and camera. First mile flew by, sunlight breaking through in strips, boots crunching on old leaves, the usual forest soundtrack humming in the background. When you spend enough time out here, that sound, the mix of bugs, birds, and wind, just becomes part of you. But about 20 minutes in, I stopped for water and realized something was off, really off. The hum was gone. Not just quiet, dead silent. No birds, no insects, nothing. Even the air felt like it was holding its breath. That's the kind of thing that gets your skin crawling without you realizing why. You start asking yourself stupid questions like, did my hearing just cut out? You know it didn't, but your brain still goes there. I tried to brush it off. Silence like that usually means a predator's nearby. A bear, maybe a mountain lion. Nothing I hadn't dealt with before. So I scanned the undergrowth, saw nothing but trees, and kept walking. And that's when things started feeling wrong in ways I couldn't explain. The service trail was supposed to follow a shallow ridge, right? I remembered that clearly. But suddenly I was in this dip, almost like a trench, with steep sides rising on both ends. The trees were strange too. Tall, thin trunks, packed so tight the canopy above looked like a solid roof. No light breaking through, no sense of direction. For a second, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn. Pulled out my GPS. No signal, not even a flicker. Which, okay, that happens sometimes out here. But still, there's usually something. I turned around to retrace my steps. Got about 2 paces before my stomach dropped. Footprints, bare footprints. Wide, deep, like someone had sprinted through the mud. They weren't there when I came through. I swear they weren't. And these weren't just faint impressions. They were fresh. The edges were wet like the mud had just settled. I stood there, staring at them, waiting for my brain to give me some reasonable explanation. It didn't. Pulled my radio, hit transmit, nothing but static. Just that dead hiss, like it was mocking me. So I did what you do in these situations. I kept moving, fast, eyes darting between the trail and the trees. Every sound, or lack of sound, felt like it was pressing against me. Finally, after what felt like hours, I saw the clearing ahead. Relief slammed into me. The tower was still there, hunched in the middle like a skeleton, wood warped, railings snapped, trapdoor hanging like a broken jaw. It leaned just enough to make you wonder if climbing it was a smart idea. Spoiler, it wasn't. I didn't care. I climbed. Fast. Boots hitting those old planks harder than I should have. Halfway up, I glanced over the tree line and froze. The woods looked wrong. Not like anything dramatic, just off. Trees shifted in my head like they weren't where they should be, like the whole layout had changed. Blinked, and everything snapped back. Just trees. Just normal woods. I told myself to stop being an idiot and got to the top. Pulled out the camera, took the pictures. Corners, railings, trapdoor hinge, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept telling myself it was adrenaline. Then I heard it. Something hit the ground below, not a branch. Branches don't land like that. This was a wet slap, like someone dropped a steak from a roof. I leaned over the railing and saw it. A chunk of meat, raw, red, stringy, still steaming like it came straight out of something warm. My throat locked up. Then the trapdoor creaked above me. Slow, deliberate. I looked up and I swear I could feel my pulse in my teeth. A hand gripped the frame, only it wasn't a normal hand. Fingers too long, bending in angles that made my stomach knot. Skin split and gray, rough like bark. Nails thick, dark, splintered like rotten wood. The hand curled slow, like it was testing the air. I didn't think. I ran. Down that staircase so fast I almost broke my neck. Boots slamming wood, echoing in my skull, hit the ground, nearly slipped on that meat, and tore into the trees. No sound behind me, nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, not even branches snapping. Just the kind of silence that feels alive. I don't know how long I ran before I saw the station roof through the trees. My legs were jelly. My lungs burned like fire. I stumbled up the steps, slammed the door, locked it, and pressed my back to the wood. Then I looked out the window, and there they were, 3 of them, standing shoulder to shoulder at the tree line. Skin caked in dirt or blood, I couldn't tell. Limbs wrong in ways I can't explain. Too long in places, bent like someone broke their bones and jammed them back together wrong. Heads tilted too far to the side. Mouths hanging open just enough to show teeth that didn't belong in human faces. Their eyes were so deep I couldn't see color, just bits. They didn't move, not when I stared, not when I reached for the rifle by the desk. The sun bled out slow, and when the last strip of light was gone, they were still there. I checked one last time before locking myself in the back room. The tree line was empty. My cousin Aaron had this big idea to go camping way out in the Appalachians. We'd done little day hikes before, sure, but this was different. He wanted to go deep, so deep we wouldn't see another soul for the whole weekend. He said it like it was the best thing ever. Just us and the woods, man. No neighbors, no noise, no rules. I should have said no. Honestly, the way he grinned when he said that should have been enough of a clue. We left early Friday morning, Drove past the last gas station, past the last bar of cell service, and just kept going. The farther we drove, the worse the road got. Narrow, cracked, and hugging the mountains like it had something to prove. One wrong turn and we'd have been rolling straight into a green abyss. Finally, we stopped at this rusted gate blocking an old dirt track. The thing was so bent and crooked it looked like no one had opened it since forever. Aaron parked in the weeds like that was totally normal and tossed me a grin. From here, we hoof it. So we did. For hours. Packs digging into our shoulders, boots crunching over what used to be logging roads. Now they were more like trails the forest was slowly eating, moss swallowing tire ruts, roots splitting old tracks. Trees leaning in like they wanted us gone. By the time we found a clearing near a thin stream, the sun was sliding down and the shadows from the trees were stretching long like black ribbons. We pitched the tent, got a fire going, and ate canned beans like two idiots playing pioneers. Aaron was loving it. "Man, this is living," he said with a mouthful of beans. "Sure," I said, "if your definition of living includes mosquitoes and maybe rabies." We joked about bears, coyotes, mountain lions, all the usual scary stuff you talk about when you're trying to act like you're not worried. Then the fire burned low and the dark came in like someone poured ink over everything. Not just regular night. This was a black so thick it felt like it had weight. No stars, no glow from far-off towns. Just the kind of dark that makes you feel like you don't exist outside the tiny circle of firelight. That first night, I woke up to something moving outside the tent. Not close, just faint crunches in the leaves. A deer, probably. I almost let it go. Until I heard it. A whistle. One long note. Flat. Low and human. Definitely human. I froze. Every muscle locked. My stomach felt like it knotted itself. I glanced at Aaron. Out cold. Lucky him. I didn't make a sound. Just lay there listening. A couple minutes later, something else broke the silence. A laugh. Except it didn't sound right. Like whoever it was didn't quite remember how to do it. One sharp bark, then silence. No follow-up, just gone. I stared at the nylon ceiling for what felt like hours, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. At some point, exhaustion won and dragged me under. Morning came. I told Aaron what I heard. "Probably hunters," he said while shoving a granola bar in his mouth. "People live out here, you know. Then why whistle in the middle of the night?" He shrugged like it was nothing. "Maybe they thought you were a deer, right? Because deer famously carry tents and campfires." That day, we hiked deeper in, if you can even call it hiking. The trails had basically vanished, just faint paths cut by animals. At one point, we passed this tree with long strips of bark peeled away. Neat and clean like someone had done it on purpose. Too wide for claws, too precise for random damage. Later, I found a dead squirrel laid out on a flat rock. Not dropped, laid out. Legs stretched straight, tail fanned like some messed up nature display. 100 yards farther, we saw a rope dangling from a high branch, swaying slow even though the air was dead still. I pointed. "You telling me that's normal?" "Old hunting line," Aaron said, but his voice was tighter than before. By late afternoon, the woods felt different, like they were closing in, somehow heavier. We didn't talk much while we ate that night. Then came the second night. I woke up to footsteps, slow, deliberate, crunching just beyond the edge of the firelight. Crunch, crunch. I held my breath and looked over. Aaron's eyes were open, wide, locked on the tent wall. The steps circled us, once, twice, then stopped. Something pressed against the tent. Just a fingertip at first, dragging across the fabric, left to right, slow, like it was tracing us. My chest clamped so tight I couldn't breathe. Aaron whispered, so quiet I barely heard, "Don't move." Then weight leaned against the entrance. The zipper held, but the fabric bulged. I could see the outline, knee, shoulder, like whoever it was had pressed in close to listen. And then Nothing. No footsteps, leaving no sound at all. We didn't sleep. We just lay there, frozen, until a thin gray light started leaking through the nylon. When we finally crawled out, the ground was smooth. No prints. No sign of anything. We didn't even pack properly, just stuffed everything into our bags and started moving. No breakfast, no talking. The whole hike back, I felt eyes on me. Every time I turned, the trees looked empty, but that didn't stop the feeling. Once, I swear I saw something pale slip between the trunks way back in the brush. Aaron saw me looking and just shook his head hard, like, don't. Just don't. It took hours to reach the gate. When I saw the car, I almost laughed from pure relief. Then I noticed the mud tracks, dozens of them, bare feet, some tiny like a child's, others massive, way wider than my boots. They circled the car over and over, prints layered on top of each other like whoever, or whatever, had been pacing all night. And on the windows, handprints, not full palms, just fingers, long smears dragging down the glass, and places where faces might have pressed. Aaron dropped the keys before getting the door open. We jumped in, slammed the locks, and he started the engine so fast, gravel sprayed as we tore out of there like the forest was chasing us. We didn't speak until we hit the pavement. My Uncle Ray had this cabin way out in the Appalachian Mountains. He called it his escape, like it was his personal paradise. My parents talked about it the same way, like it was some magical little spot where the world couldn't bother you. Reality? It was 5 hours from anything even close to normal life. I'd never been there before, and to be honest, I didn't want to. But that summer, my parents decided I needed fresh air and real-world experience, which is parent code for, we're tired of you sitting around the house doing nothing all day. So, a week in the mountains with Uncle Ray. I didn't get a say in it. We left before sunrise in his old mud-caked pickup. At first, it felt kind of like an adventure. Just me and Ray bouncing down the highway with the windows down and country radio playing low. But the farther we drove, the more the world just peeled away. First, the gas stations and fast food places disappeared. Then the pavement cracked and turned into gravel. Eventually, even the gravel gave up. It was just dirt roads and trees swallowing everything. By the time we finally got to his cabin, the sun was sliding behind the ridges, and the air felt heavier, like it wasn't just air anymore, like it wanted to settle on you and keep you there. Ray was proud of the place. A squat little log cabin tucked in a hollow, surrounded on all sides by steep ridges. No neighbors, no cell signal, just an ocean of trees and silence so deep my ears actually rang. He gave me the grand tour like it was a luxury hotel, showed me the creek where we get our water, the beat-up generator humming by the shed, the rifle rack by the door. Then he gave me one rule, and he gave it serious. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Don't wander, these hills go on forever, and people get lost out here all the time." I nodded. Fine, whatever. I wasn't planning to take any scenic hikes, believe me. The first 2 days, honestly, boring. Chopping wood, hauling water, cleaning fish. Ray spent most of the time on the porch with a beer in his hand, talking about old hunting trips. At night, he told me stories about hunters who vanished without leaving tracks, about things that lived old up here and never came down, about families so deep in the mountains they weren't really like us anymore. He said it in this calm, matter-of-fact way that made it worse, honestly. Like he wasn't joking. I laughed the first night. Thought it was just some creepy campfire stuff. By the third night, I didn't think it was funny anymore. Because that's when I woke up to the sound. Tap, tap, tap. I opened my eyes in the dark, staring at the cabin ceiling. The sound was soft, but sharp enough to cut through the quiet. Not random, like a branch hitting the roof. It was rhythmic, slow, like knuckles on wood. It came from the wall by the front door. I froze, barely breathing. Told myself it was wind. Had to be. The cabin creaked all the time, right? It went on for maybe a minute. Then it stopped. Just silence. Eventually, I fell back asleep. The next morning, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Until I stepped outside. There were footprints in the mud. Bare feet. No shoes, no socks. Small, like a kid's. But wrong. The toes were too long, stretched out like they didn't know when to stop growing. The arch was almost gone, like the foot had given up on being a foot halfway through. Ray saw them too, and the way his face changed, I'll never forget that. He didn't say much, just told me to stay close that day. And he kept the rifle within arm's reach, even inside the cabin. That night, it came back. First, the tapping again. Same slow rhythm, but this time it moved. Circled the cabin, dragging itself along the walls like it wanted us to know it was there. Then came another sound, high-pitched, almost a laugh, but broken, wet. Like it didn't understand how to laugh, just copied the shape of the sound and got it wrong. Ray grabbed the rifle and snapped at me to stay inside. He threw the door open and stormed out, flashlight beam cutting across the trees. The noises stopped instantly. The whole forest froze. I walked through the window, holding my breath, while he swept the light across the tree line. Nothing moved, not even the leaves. When he came back, his face was pale, his jaw locked so tight it looked painful. He didn't tell me a story that night, didn't say a single word, just sat in a chair by the door with the rifle across his knees, staring at the dark until dawn. I didn't sleep a second. The next day was worse. We found more footprints by the creek, dozens this time, some small, some big, all wrong. They crisscrossed like something, or a lot of somethings, had been circling for hours. Ray said we were leaving first thing in the morning. His voice was flat, no room for discussion. He didn't pack, didn't do anything but keep that rifle near him the whole day. That last night, I sat on the floor with my flashlight clutched so hard my hands hurt. Midnight came. Then I saw movement outside the window, shapes slipping between the trees. At first, I thought deer. Please let it be deer. But then one of them stood up. It was naked, skin so pale it looked like paper under the moonlight. No hair, arms too long, hanging almost to its knees. And its face, the eyes were too wide, glassy, spaced too far apart. The mouth stretched open in this awful grin, and inside, the teeth weren't sharp, but there were too many of them, flat and packed together, like they'd kept growing without stopping. I couldn't make a sound, couldn't move. Behind it, more shapes slid between the trees. Dozens of them now. Some crawled low, some ran on all fours, all of them stopping, watching the cabin. Then I heard it again, that broken laugh, like someone choking on their own voice. Ray yanked me so hard from the window I nearly fell. We didn't bother with the lights, didn't lock the door, we just ran. He had the rifle, I had nothing. We threw whatever we could into the truck and floored it down the dirt road. When the headlights hit the clearing, they were there, at the tree line, standing in a row, pale and still, all grinning. Ray fired one shot out the window as we tore out of there. I don't think he hit anything. We didn't stop until we hit the highway, hours later. Neither of us spoke the whole way. Back then, life felt loud in a way I didn't know how to turn off. Traffic outside my apartment. So I decided to do the only thing that made sense. Get out. Not forever. Just long enough to remember what quiet felt like. Somewhere no one could reach me. So I pulled out a map and started looking for the emptiest place I could find. Somewhere the roads thinned out into crooked lines and the town names were printed so small they looked like afterthoughts. That's how I ended up picking Appalachia. Of course, everyone who heard about my plan had an opinion. My coworker warned me about bears, like I was planning to fight one barehanded. Someone else said snakes. Somebody even mentioned mountain lions, which I didn't think were still around there, but honestly, none of that bothered me. I wasn't going out there to play survivalist or film a TikTok series. I had good gear, plenty of food for 3 nights, and a decent knife. I just wanted peace. And maybe a sunrise worth remembering. The trail I found wasn't much of a trail, if I'm being honest. It looked more like an old logging road nature was taking back, slow and steady. Trees had bent over it in places like they were trying to erase the path. Every few steps, vines grabbed at my boots, like they wanted me to turn around. It took almost 4 hours before I found a flat patch near a creek that looked good for camping. No footprints, no beer cans, no broken glass or trash. Nothing to suggest anyone had been out there in years. Exactly what I was looking for. The first day was almost perfect. I set up my tent, collected water from the creek, filtered it, and made a quick meal on my camp stove. By dusk, I was sitting on a fallen log, feeling more relaxed than I had in months. Just me, the trees, and the soft sound of water moving over rocks. For a while, everything felt right. The forest had its own rhythm, and for a few minutes I matched mine to it. Then it stopped. The crickets went quiet first. 1 second they were filling the air, and the next, it was like someone had flipped a switch. Even the creek sounded like it was holding its breath. I told myself it was nothing, probably a predator passing through. Happens all the time, right? Still, the silence crawled under my skin. I zipped myself into the tent earlier than planned, played some music low on my phone to drown out the unease, and eventually fell asleep. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. Sometime after midnight. It wasn't a sound that woke me, at least not one I recognized. It was just this feeling, like the air outside had shifted, heavy, different. I sat there listening, and that's when I heard it. The dragging, something sliding through leaves just outside my tent, slow, uneven, like something heavy was being pulled. My first thought was deer, but the sound was wrong. No twig snaps, no steady rhythm of steps, just dragging. It moved past the tent, circled halfway around, then stopped. The silence that followed felt unnatural. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Then came soft crunching, like footsteps moving away. I stayed awake for at least an hour, gripping my knife so tight my hand hurt. Nothing else happened. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I passed out. Morning didn't feel like relief. When I crawled out of the tent, my stomach dropped. Tracks everywhere, not just one set. Dozens. Bare feet pressed deep into the damp earth around my tent. Some tiny, like a kid's. Others long and wide, bigger than mine. And the shape was wrong. The toes spread too far, like they'd clawed in. They weren't old either, sharp edges, fresh. I told myself they had to be old. They had to be. But then I saw the pattern. They circled my tent, over and over, like a ritual. That's when I knew I was leaving. By 6 a.m. I had everything packed. My car was 6 miles away, and I planned to make it there before noon. I didn't even eat breakfast, just slung my pack on and started walking fast. About an hour in, I heard it, a stick breaking somewhere behind me, maybe 50 feet back. I froze, waited. Nothing. Took a breath and kept moving. Then, snap, closer this time. I whipped around, scanning the trees. Nothing. No movement, just endless green. Then I heard it, clicking. At first I thought it was an insect. A sharp, wet click, like someone tapping their tongue against their teeth. Then another, and another. It stopped when I stopped, started when I moved. Click, click, click. I picked up the pace. So did the clicking. I broke into a jog, heart slamming, and that's when the sound changed. No more clicking, running. Something was running behind me. I don't even remember if I screamed. All I know is I ran like my life depended on it, because it did. Branches whipped my arms, roots clawed at my boots, but I didn't stop until the trees thinned out and the old logging road opened up ahead like salvation. My car sat there, sunlight glinting off the windshield like a lifeline. I didn't slow down. Slammed into the driver's side, yanked the door open, threw myself inside. When I locked the doors and looked back, they were there, standing at the edge of the trees, 4 of them, maybe more. Pale bodies, thin and wrong, spines curved like they'd never learned to stand up straight, heads tilted like they were curious. One raised an arm, slow, stiff, like it was trying to wave, except it wasn't right, like it had seen people do it once and was trying to copy. I started the engine and floored it. Gravel spit out from under the tires as I tore down that road. My hands shook so hard I could barely keep the wheel straight. I never went back. My shift at the ranger station started at 6. The station sat on a ridge above a narrow fire road about 8 miles from the nearest real sign of life. No cell service, no bars, no signal, nothing but trees and dirt for miles. The cabin had no power except for an old generator that rattled and coughed whenever you asked too much of it. If you didn't like quiet, this was the wrong gig. Honestly, I didn't mind it most of the time. I'd done worse shifts. I liked the solitude, at least in theory. It felt clean, simple, no constant noise from cars or people, just me, a logbook, and a voice on the radio once in a while. I had my usual survival kit, a thermos of lukewarm coffee, a flashlight with backup batteries, my jacket, and the same old radio that never left the desk. I even packed an extra sandwich because I knew how long the night could drag. Most nights were dead silent. If you got lucky, you'd hear an owl out in the trees, or maybe a coyote yipping somewhere down the ridge. I'd take that any day over the city noise. That night started the same way. Uneventful, boring, the kind of night where you check the clock every 10 minutes because time feels stuck. Around 9, I got a call about a missing hiker, guy named Caldwell, mid-40s, experienced enough to know better. He'd been due back 2 days ago. The search team spent the day sweeping the southern trails but had to pull out when the light died. My instructions were simple: stay on the radio and keep an ear out in case they checked in, and log any incoming calls. By 10, the cabin felt like a tomb. I was slouched back in that squeaky chair behind the desk, flipping through an old field guide just to keep my brain moving. I'd read that book 100 times, but when you're staring at the same 4 walls for hours, even bad distractions feel good. That's when the radio crackled to life. Not a polite crackle either. It hit like a firecracker, sharp and loud enough to make me spill a little coffee on my sleeve. Static first, like a hissing snake, and then a voice, "Station 3, come in." I froze for a second. The voice didn't sound like anyone I knew, and it wasn't normal. There was this grit to it, like someone talking with a throat full of gravel. "This is Station 3, I said, leaning in and pressing the button. "Go ahead, Yathu." I waited a beat, thinking maybe they dropped the transmission. Then, almost like a whisper through the static, "It's too dark, can't find the trail." My stomach tightened. "Identify yourself," I said, sharper this time. "Who am I speaking to?" Dead air. Then, soft and broken, "Hungry, out here." The line cut. No click, no fade, just silence. I stared at the radio like it had grown teeth. Logged it immediately, because that's what you do, even when your brain's spinning. Interference wasn't rare out here, but the channel was locked. Nobody outside the department should have been on it. Either someone hacked the frequency or, I didn't have a second option that made sense. 10 minutes later, I heard something outside, a crunch. Light, like a boot on gravel. I pushed the chair back and went to the window. The fire road stretched out under the floodlight, empty except for my truck sitting exactly where I left it. Dust still clung to the tires from the drive up. Beyond the glow was nothing but black trees. The sound came again, softer this time, like weight shifting on loose stone. I stepped onto the porch with my flashlight and swept the beam across the dirt road. Just trees and silence. Nothing moved. Still, the feeling stuck with me, that prickly sense that something had been out there and slipped back into the dark the second I looked. By midnight, my nerves were starting to buzz, and then I saw it. Movement. Between the trees, not close, maybe 40, 50 feet out, but real. Something low to the ground, moving fast, almost like a big dog. My hand jerked the light toward it, but by the time the beam hit, whatever it was had vanished. I grabbed the radio, tried the southern checkpoint, static. Switched to the main channel, dead. It was like someone yanked the cord on the whole system. That's when my hands started to shake. I locked the door, went to the gun rack and checked the rifle. I'd handled rifles for years, but my grip felt loose, like my body didn't trust me anymore. Half an hour crawled by. Then I saw the prints. I'd stepped outside again to check the generator, mostly because I didn't want to sit still, and when the flashlight hit the dirt near the fire road, I froze. Bare footprints, dozens of them. They weren't right. Long, narrow, the arches too deep, the toes curled like claws. Some prints doubled over themselves like whoever, or whatever, made them had been circling for hours. I backed up toward the door, and that's when I heard it. The sound was soft, wet, like someone chewing with their mouth open, slow and deliberate. It came from the tree line. I killed the porch light and slipped back inside, heart thudding so loud I was sure it could hear me. Sat in the dark with the rifle, eyes locked on the window. That's when the tapping started. Behind me, on the glass, just a fingertip at first, tap, tap, tap. Testing, calm, not random. I spun so fast the chair tipped over, but the window was empty. Then I saw it, just at the edge of the floodlight. A hand pressed to the glass, long fingers, nails black and splintered like rotten wood. It slid away before I could even aim. That was it. That was my breaking point. I didn't think. I ran, snatched the keys, bolted for the door, and sprinted to the truck. The second the engine roared, the woods erupted. Screams, not animal, not human, something in between, high and broken, like glass grinding on metal. Shapes burst from the trees, thin, pale limbs flashing in the light, moving too fast, too many to count. I floored it down the fire road, gravel spitting like gunfire under the tires. Something slammed the bed once, twice, hard enough to rock the truck, but I didn't look back. Couldn't. When the first streetlight of town appeared, I realized I'd been gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles looked like bone. I didn't stop driving until I hit the Ranger headquarters lot, left the engine running, stumbled inside, and couldn't get a word out for a full minute. Next morning, I drove back with a full crew. The station looked normal, door locked, windows fine. The dirt out front, smooth. I never signed up for another night shift again. I was 23 when it happened. That summer, I had a job most people wouldn't want. Seasonal trail maintenance for the state. Basically, I was the guy who hiked through forgotten paths in the middle of nowhere with a pack full of tools, clearing brush, repainting faded markers, and making sure people didn't wander off and disappear. It wasn't glamorous, it didn't pay much, but I liked it. There was something about the solitude, no traffic, no noise, no people breathing down your neck, just the rhythm of your own boots and the buzz of insects that sounded like background static. Out there, the world felt paused. But the trail I pulled that day wasn't like the others. This one ran way out into the Appalachian backcountry, deep enough that most hikers never bother. The kind of place you wouldn't even notice on a map unless someone pointed right at it. Closest town was about an hour away. Service on your phone? Forget it. If something went wrong, you were it. Your own backup plan. I'd worked enough remote spots to know what that meant, and I was okay with it. Usually. The trailhead was nothing but a gravel lot carved out of the trees. My truck was the only vehicle there, which didn't surprise me. Hardly anyone came out this far unless they had a reason. I killed the engine, stepped out, and felt the heat rising off the gravel. It was early, but summer out there didn't mess around. I hoisted the pack onto my shoulders, clipped the radio to my vest, and checked the hatchet on my belt. Habit more than anything. The first stretch of the hike was fine, just endless green swallowing everything. The air felt heavy but clean, like the kind that sticks to your skin but still tastes fresh. The forest out there had a different kind of presence. It wasn't like the state parks, closer to town. friendly and tamed. This was old growth, heavy trunks leaning like they'd been watching for centuries, roots gripping earth like fists. About 2 miles in, I noticed the first thing that felt off. The trees didn't look right. Not dead, not diseased, just wrong. A lot of them were bent in strange ways, like something had forced them into shapes they weren't meant to take. And the bark, God, the bark, peeled in these long, clean, vertical strips, like claw marks, but too high, higher than any black bear I'd ever heard of. I told myself it was weather damage. Storms tear trees up all the time, and I'd seen plenty of ugly scars before. That's what I kept thinking as I walked. That's what I wanted to think. Then I saw the rocks. They were stacked dead center on the trail. 10 stones balanced into a perfect tower, each one smaller than the last, like some weird little sculpture. People build cairns, sure, but not out here, not this far in, and definitely not this neat. I stared at it longer than I should have, trying to decide what it meant. Trail markers? A prank? Something else? It didn't feel like either of the first two. It felt deliberate, like a message, even if I didn't know the language. I hesitated before finally kicking it over. Stones scattered into the dirt, and for some reason that made me uneasy, like I'd just done something I shouldn't have. Half a mile later, I heard the first sound. Laughter, thin, high-pitched laughter floating through the trees like a thread of air. Not close, not far, just there. I froze. My heart punched the inside of my ribs hard enough to make me feel sick. My first thought was kids. Had to be. Maybe a family out here for some insane reason. Hello? My voice sounded small, like it didn't belong out there. No answer. I stood still for a full minute, listening so hard my ears hurt. Nothing. Just the faint hiss of wind through leaves. I told myself it was a bird. Some weird bird call I didn't know. That's what I clung to as I started walking again, faster this time. The trail curved around a ridge, and that's when I saw him. Crouched in the brush about 20 feet off the path, no shirt, skin smeared with mud and streaks of something darker. Hair hanging in ropes, tangled with leaves like a nest. His arms and legs were folded tight under him, bones jutting sharp as sticks, and his eyes, God, those eyes. Too wide, too white, staring like he'd just seen something crawl out of hell. We locked eyes. "Hey," I said, my voice cracking like a cheap radio. "You okay out here?" He didn't move, didn't blink, just stared like I wasn't real. Then, slowly, he smiled. His teeth were shattered, black at the roots, and something wet and red slid down his chin. My stomach knotted so hard I felt dizzy. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't listen. I just started backing up, one step at a time, trying not to break eye contact. Then I blinked, and he was gone, not ran. Gone, like he'd never been there. The brush where he crouched was empty. No sound, no rustle, nothing. I don't remember breathing as I turned and started walking fast, too fast. Boots crunching loud in the dirt. Every step felt like I was being watched. Then I heard it, footsteps. Bare feet slapping the trail, quick and light, matching mine. I broke into a run. The trail split ahead, a fork I didn't remember, and my stomach dropped. Which way was out? Left? Right? No time. I went left and barreled downhill, lungs burning, roots clawing at my boots. Then the laughter started again. Not one voice this time. 2, 3, maybe more. Thin, broken giggles peeling out of the trees like cracks in the air, always close, no matter how fast I ran. I crashed into a clearing and stopped dead. They were waiting, at least 10 of them, pale, naked, bent wrong, low to the ground like animals. Arms swinging loose as ropes, skin stretched over bone like wet paper, faces smeared with mud and blood, eyes glossy and blank like dolls that had seen too much. And in the center of the clearing, swinging upside down from a branch by its ankles, was what used to be a deer, skin raw, still twitching like its nerves hadn't figured out it was dead yet. Every head turned toward me in perfect unison. I ran, harder than I've ever run. My lungs were fire, my legs were screaming, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. The sound behind me, feet pounding dirt, breaths hissing through teeth, never faded. Branches clawed at my face, my vision tunneled. All I could think was, don't fall, don't stop, don't look back. Then, through the trees, I saw it. The truck. I hit the lot at full speed, slammed the door open and dove inside. I quit that night.